Just a matter of time before Mike gets the clean shot. Berbick hanging on like Mitch Green did. Bone crusher Smith. Straight jab by Mike Tyson. 20 years old, Mike Tyson on his way to becoming one of the youngest heavyweight champions of all time. Bangs the body. Wow, with that uppercut is Tyson. Catches him with a right left hook, and he goes down. He goes down. He should be able to get up from this. His legs may be shut. They are. As Trevor Berbick falls back in the ropes. I don't know if he's going to be able to continue. He's got the heart, but his body won't let him do what his mind wants to. And he's counted out. It'll be scored as a knockout. Mills Lane counted him out to 10. It's all over. We've got a brand new heavyweight champion of the world, Mike Tyson.
In 1986, Mike Tyson became the world's youngest heavyweight boxing champion. He was 20 years old. When Trevor Berbick hit the mat in the second round, it only solidified what was already a widely known fact at the time. Tyson hit the hardest. Tyson was the fastest. Tyson was ferocious. Simply put, Mike Tyson was the best. He had ended more than half of his first 28 fights with first-round knockouts. Iron Mike was more than a sensation, he was a force of nature. He leveled giants in seconds and became world-renowned as the hardest-hitting fighter in the history of the sport. He was faster than lightning and could evaporate to avoid his opponent's punches. Heavyweights from all over the world studied his matches and planned for his movements, and still, Tyson knocked them out cold, defending his titles for 4 years before his first ever career loss. At 23 years old, his record was 37-1. He had won 33 of those fights by knockout. To be the best in the world means that you have worked harder than any of your competitors. You have studied longer and harder and immersed yourself in your work to the point that you are the pinnacle of human achievement. And once you've reached the top, you've now got a target on your back and must fight to retain your status as the best. When you consider all the effort it takes to truly be the best in the world, you have to wonder, what drives somebody to accomplish all that? The interesting thing is, we know that on a microscopic level, that drive is built from 4 simple chemicals. As Simon Sinek writes in his book Leaders Eat Last, endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin are 4 chemicals that naturally occur in all of our bodies, and they are what cause us to have goals and give us the energy and motivation to achieve them. These chemicals, when properly harnessed, can turn us from mediocre to mighty, from unsuccessful to undisputed, from chumps to champs. So let's find out how you can think like a champion.
This is round 2, the WBC Heavyweight Championship of the world. Trevor Berbick and Mike Tyson. Tyson goes to work right away, and he's got Trevor in trouble, and he's down.
To look inside the mind of Iron Mike is to look inside the mind of a champion. And if we want to think like champions, we have to understand the construction and motivation of a champion's mind. In 2000, Tyson beat Lou Savarese with a TKO 38 seconds into the first round. After that match, when asked about fighting Louis Lennox, Tyson said the following: "I was going to rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one who can stop me. My style is impetuous. My defense is impregnable. I'm ferocious. I want to eat your heart. I want to eat his children." Not too pretty, right? The mind of a champion is not necessarily perfect. It's aggressive and ruthless. In his prime, Mike's mindset was the mindset of a literal warrior. And when you think about it, humans are where we are because our ancestors were warriors and hunters. Early humans had to have the energy to hunt animals for hours or days. And after all of that time and effort, they may not have been successful at capturing any prey. Over time, humans evolved to have tremendous stamina and mental strength. The mental machine built by the 4 chemicals was what gave humans the perseverance to make it through those long days and nights when they were tracking food all day and going to sleep hungry at night. In Leaders Eat Last, Simon Sinek explains that those 4 chemicals are the 4 chemicals of leadership. These are the chemicals that have advanced humanity to be the pinnacle of the animal kingdom or the world. Everything. I mean, everything pretty much. For better or worse, humans have become the best at basically everything, and Sinek says that these are the 4 chemicals that have made that a possibility. Endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Now, don't worry, I got a C+ in high school chemistry, so we're not going to go into the weeds on any of this stuff, but we can see how each of these 4 chemicals create a cycle that continues to advance us as humans and as leaders. And we can see their effect when we study the process of events that made Mike Tyson a champion. The first half of the leadership chemicals are what Sinek calls the selfish chemicals. These 2 chemicals exist to help us accomplish our personal goals. Think about a time when you accomplished something that was difficult, or maybe something you didn't want to do. Some obligation, some chore, maybe it was something strenuous like a 5K or a marathon. Congratulations, by the way. You got through that situation thanks to the 2-chemical machine of endorphin and dopamine. This simple 2-punch combo makes humans capable of pushing through temporary pain in service of achieving a larger goal. You see, endorphin masks pain. When you hear people talk about the rush they get after a workout or the glow of the runner's high, it is endorphin they are experiencing. When Mike Tyson was in the ring landing punches on his opponent, he was experiencing the glow of endorphin. And humans can actually develop a craving for endorphin. Early in his career, Mike Tyson's training regimen was notoriously difficult. Leading up to a fight, Tyson would spend his days waking up at 4 a.m. and jogging 5 miles, completing 2,000 sit-ups, and running 20 sparring rounds and countless other exercises 6 days each week. Tyson crafted his body into peak physical shape, and he felt good. Later in his career, when he was out of shape, he would go on miles-long runs in the desert around Las Vegas, trying to find internal peace and a semblance of the glow he felt in his younger days. Tyson missed the high of endorphin. And if endorphin allows us to endure pain to achieve our goals, dopamine is the light at the end of the tunnel. Dopamine is the reward chemical. When we accomplish something we are proud of, our brain gets a shot of dopamine. Dopamine is success and happiness. It is contentedness. Dopamine is the Pavlovian reward for finishing something hard. When Mike Tyson's opponents hit the canvas, Mike got a massive shot of dopamine. Mike would make his opponents literally crumble and hear the arena roar. Not only would the arena go wild, but Mike's brain would go wild too, flooding Mike's frontal cortex with dopamine, the reward for his efforts. Mike's wildly passionate after-match interviews were fueled by the happiness and accomplishment he felt, which was a direct result of the dopamine production in his brain. So this simple chemical 1-2 punch results in a system that compels us to achieve our goals. We want to accomplish our goals because we know there will be a big shot of dopamine at the end. And we know that although that path might be difficult, endorphin will help numb the pain and get us through to see success. So endorphin and dopamine, the selfish chemicals, make the first half of the leadership chemicals. But what makes the second half? The selfless chemicals, serotonin and oxytocin. Where the selfish chemicals help motivate us to face adversity and achieve our goals, the selfless chemicals help us interact with the people around us, ultimately creating organizations larger than ourselves. The selfless chemicals create what Sinek calls the circle of trust in our communities. So where the selfish chemicals were what ensured that early humans could go out hunting for many days, the selfless chemicals were what made the hunters bring their food back to be shared with their community. The first selfless chemical, serotonin, is what creates the sensation of pride. You see, humans are social creatures and we look for the approval of those around us. And when we feel that approval, we experience the effects of serotonin that reinforces the idea that we've done something good for ourselves and for our community. Think about the approval that Mike felt when Trevor Berbick hit the mat and the Las Vegas Hilton went absolutely wild. That is instant social approval to an extent that few of us will ever have the chance to experience. He made thousands of people exceptionally happy. Serotonin flooded Mike's veins, and he took the podium at the post-fight conference, riding the high of approval from the crowd and the jovial press crew. Mike said, "I was throwing hydrogen bombs. Every punch was with murderous intention. I'll fight any man in the world." The effects of serotonin were not just felt by Mike, however. That sensation of pride was felt by his trainers and coaches after his win. Fans in the crowd or bettors who won money on the fight all got a rush of serotonin for being part of the victory. The press who interviewed him asked him if he would be the savior for the then stagnant heavyweight division, and Mike said, "Well, that's for the people to decide." The room then burst into applause. That is social approval. At the same post-fight conference, Mike said that he won the belt for Cus D'Amato, the boxing trainer who brought Mike up from a young scrapper in Brooklyn to becoming the world heavyweight champion. Cus taught Mike his peekaboo boxing style and taught him how to train to be the best in the world. Mike spent his teen years in Cus's care, living in Cus's Catskill, New York home with him and his wife. Mike has always spoken highly of Cus D'Amato and says he owes his life to Cus. Unfortunately, Cus died before the championship fight against Berbick. So Mike loved Cus D'Amato and he won the belt for Cus. This demonstrates the last of the 4 leadership chemicals, the selfless chemical oxytocin. This is the chemical that flows through our veins when we develop a deep trust for somebody else. In other words, this is the chemical foundation of love. And that deep trust that oxytocin fosters in us is the glue that holds Simon Sinek's circle of trust together. It is oxytocin that causes us to care for one another, and it is oxytocin that makes us feel safe within the circle of trust. So we can evaluate the scene surrounding Mike's championship win and see how he demonstrates all 4 of the leadership chemicals. But that's 1986 Mike Tyson. It's a pretty well-known fact that Mike Tyson's career wasn't all highs. Going into the 90s, he had a fall from grace and had some pretty low lows. Think about it. In his teens and 20s, Tyson earned millions of dollars and the adoration of millions of fans. He was constantly reminded that he was the best in the world, and that could warp anybody's mind. But like I said before, the champion's mind of Mike Tyson is not perfect. It is aggressive and ruthless. His career was marked by notoriety. From biting Evander Holyfield's ear in the ring to street fights outside the ring, Tyson's competitive tendencies could be outside anybody's control, including his own. Tyson's later career was tumultuous and dramatic. The 90s were messy for him. His hubris had him entering the ring without studying his opponents. He had an entourage of yes men who drained his pockets in return for hollow flattery. Mike Tyson, who earned $700 million over his career, found himself deep in debt in the late 90s. In a haze of addiction, Mike desperately searched for clarity, vying to be the undisputed world champion once again. He lashed out at the world, feeling guilt for having let down the memory of his mentor. We can see how this downfall came from the abuse of the leadership chemicals and the destruction of Mike's circle of trust. You see, once Mike became the undisputed champion of the world, he grew complacent. He was so good that he could beat some of his challengers without specifically training to beat them. He just went in the ring and did his Mike Tyson thing. So Mike started partying more and training less. He started going to training sessions hungover or high, and he started overeating and abandoned all the principles that got him to be the undisputed champ. Where Mike was once used to experiencing the runner's high of endorphin during workouts, he used it as a crutch during his marathon partying sessions. And where he once looked to boxing victories as his source of dopamine hits, he started manufacturing dopamine by abusing drugs. Mike's circle of trust had crumbled, and where he once had a ring of trusted mentors around him, he now had hangers-on and yes-men who just wanted to party with Mike Tyson and siphon money and drugs and luxury goods from him. Serotonin used to come from the approval of Mike's boxing trainers and coaches from victories, but now came from buying his yes-men luxury cars and going on expensive shopping dates with women he barely knew. Mike's oxytocin levels were probably the most out of whack. Where he used to have the deep trust of his relationship with the D'Amato family on a daily basis, he now had a revolving door of business associates who told him they were operating in his best interests. His romantic relationships were completely unstable, and he was trying to fill the void with meaningless one-night stands. He was seeking and experiencing the 4 leadership chemicals in destructive ways. Mike Tyson's life has been a wild whipsaw, from the best of success to a tremendous fall from grace, now to him stabilizing and learning how to control himself. In his autobiography, Tyson expresses regret as he looks back on the anger that fueled some of the actions of his youth. Tyson is a reader of philosophy and has now taken time to reflect on his life and learn to improve himself mentally. At the time of writing his autobiography, he was much more composed and calm, and has learned how to control his competitive tendencies to fit in more normally with the world outside the boxing ring. So the biggest question here is, how do we make the 4 leadership chemicals work for us? Number 1 is to be conscious of the chemicals. Now that you understand how these 4 chemicals interact and make 2 systems that turn us from just mindless animals into collaborative, social, goal-driven creatures, you can consciously observe at which point of each process you're at. If you recognize that you're about to undergo a painful, if temporary, process in pursuit of a goal, then you know that you've got endorphin as your ally. Enjoy your victories and look back on them, remembering that you were experiencing a hit of dopamine and the serotonin rush from social approval. Be sure to recognize which relationships around you make you feel good and give you that rush of oxytocin that is the result of deep trust. Those relationships are an asset for you. Number 2 is to visualize your process and your success. Okay, now this one screams like Instagram motivational fluff, but let me explain. In Leaders Eat Last, Simon Sinek explains that visualizing your goals is key in how the human mind approaches adversity. Mike Tyson didn't wake up at 4 a.m. and train every day with no endgame in mind. He knew he was going to become the world champion heavyweight. But even that's not enough. He envisioned himself connecting with the jaw of his opponent. He heard the sound of his opponent collapsing on the mat. He envisioned himself lifting the belt over his head in front of an audience of thousands of screaming spectators. He envisioned these events so clearly that he remained fixated on making them a reality. This also prepares you to react accordingly when those successes occur. Number 3 is to remember that the moment is fleeting. And I say this because I think it's important to remember to moderate the highs and lows of each chemical. Now, I'm not telling you this to purposely rain on your own parades or to celebrate your failures, but if you can recognize the fact that your moods are amplified by the chemical cocktail rushing around your body at the time, you may be more likely to react in a reasoned manner, rather than letting emotion take the reins. The heat of the moment is the heat of the moment, and nobody can entirely take themselves out of it. But if you can remind yourself every so often that you're in control, and the lows aren't as low as they may feel, and the highs may not be as high as they feel, then you will be more likely to focus on your future and plan for continued success. If I'm telling myself, hey, I'm feeling great because of this victory at work, I need to check myself and remember that if I want to continue feeling good and content, then I've got to put the work in now for next week, or else next week might come along and I won't have enough leads, or I won't have enough work planned, or I might be blindsided by something that I had left on the back burner a little too long. So enjoy your successes and remember that failure is temporary, but never let yourself coast for too long. Like Mike Tyson learned, once you're on the top, a lot of people will be coming for you, so you've got to fight to stay there. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with a friend who you think would find it valuable as well. Please slam the like and subscribe buttons, and go ahead and leave a comment down below. Do you agree with the ideas I presented here? Do you have any questions about Undisputed Truth or Leaders Eat Last? Let me know in the comments down below. Follow my Instagram for posts about what I'm reading and thinking about on a day-to-day basis, and definitely keep your eyes peeled for my next video. I'm working on them all the time, and I have some really great topics lined up, so be sure to subscribe to see those. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.